Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this planning meeting of Melton Borough Council. I'm Councillor Pam Posnett, Chair of Planning. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the side of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park, nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist anyone who needs any assistance. Please put your phone to silent during this meeting. We'll be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. If members wish to speak, please raise your hand and speak directly into the microphone in front of you. Remember to turn it off once you have finished. Members voting will be by raised hands. I would like to introduce those present to you. The members this evening, in alphabetical order, are Councillor Browne. No, they're not. They're Councillor Webster, sorry. Councillor Webster is my vice chairman, so Webster's at the end of the alphabet, but he's moved up to be closer to me. So Councillor Webster, then we have Councillor Chandler, Councillor Browne, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Holmes doesn't seem to have arrived yet. Councillor Illingworth, Councillor Pritchett, Councillor Smith, and Councillor Wood. We have a team of officers present who are to my left, the Planning Development Manager, Louise Parker, Senior Planning Officer, Andrew Cunningham, and Planning Officer, Helen White. To my right, we have Planning Solicitors, Sarah Dibble and Tom Pickwell. We also have our Democratic Services team present, assisting with the technology and taking the minutes. And they are Helen Ainge and Sarah Evans. I don't believe we've received any apologies for absence. We need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of May. I take it you've all read those minutes from the 26th of May. Are there any issues relating to those minutes? Councillor Browne?
Just to be clear, I wasn't at that meeting, so I'll not take part in this.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
This discussion.
Thank you. There are no issues from anybody else. So can I have a proposal for those minutes to be accepted? Councillor Illingworth, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Webster, thank you very much. Before we start the meeting, I would just like to say that agenda item 4.2, planning application reference 21/00836/4, land at 36 Main Road, Kirby Bellas, has been drawn from the agenda. Due to the applicant submitting a late representation containing information that requires a considered response, which could result in amendments needing to be made to the report. Thank you. So the schedule of applications is, our first one is Meadow Cottage, 37 New Road, Burton Lazars. And I'd like to hand over to Helen White, who is the planning officer who is reporting on this application. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a replacement dwelling, including the change of use of the adjacent paddock to be included within the residential curtilage. The site is located on New Road, Burton Lazars. There are residential properties located either side of the site and a private paddock located to the rear. The application was deferred from Planning Committee on the 3rd of February this year to allow for further discussions with the applicant to address concerns raised by the Parish Council. In addition to the amendments made by the applicant to the scheme, an additional condition, condition 11, has been put forward. This condition would remove permitted development rights so that it wouldn't be possible to extend the new dwelling into the area of the existing paddock without planning permission. In addition, a landscaping condition has been included, which would allow for the installation of screen planting along the shared boundary with the old school to protect their amenity. So if we move now to the amendments to the scheme, sorry, not changing the slide, just to discuss the amendments, okay? So the footprint of the dwelling has been relocated so that it's wholly within the residential curtilage of the existing dwelling, and no part of it extends into what is the existing paddock. In addition, it's been set back a further 3 meters from the highway boundary. Right, if we can move to the next slide, please. The bulk of the building has been reduced so that it's now a 1.5 story dwelling measuring 6.5 meters in height with a single story rear wing. So as you can see from the top right hand plan, there's a dotted red line which shows the extent of the 2-story rear wing which was proposed under the original submission. So that's now been reduced to a single story rear wing. In addition, the 2-story detached garage has been removed and an integral single garage has been included at the end of the rear wing. And there's a revised palette of materials, including the use of stone coins and roof slates to better reflect the material palette of the adjacent property, Lynn Cottage. If you can move to the next slide, please. So the floor area of the proposed dwelling has been reduced by 89 square meters or 38% from what was originally put forward when you considered it at February committee. In addition, there will be 2 first floor bedrooms, but the 3rd bedroom would be located on the ground floor with access to a ground floor shower room, which would provide more flexible living accommodation. We can move to the next slide, please. This is a view of the site from the public footpath across the paddock to the rear, and the character of the site wouldn't change from this point. If we can move to the next slide, please. This is the existing dwelling within the application site. Now, if we can move to the next slide, please. And this is an artist's impression of what the new dwelling would look like in the context of Lynn Cottage. As a result of the amendments made to the proposed scheme, it's considered that it would be well assimilated into the site context. It's noted that both the parish council and the ward councillor no longer object to the proposal, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. I omitted to ask you, have you got any declarations of interest in any of this application? Anybody? No, fine, thank you. Have you got any questions for? Yes, Councillor Holmes. I'd just like to say Councillor Holmes entered the council chamber as Helen White began speaking. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say, great that you've actually done things like getting the stone. I know I'm keen about stone, but Lynn Cottage is an important dwelling, and I think it's nice that everything. So I'd like to congratulate you really for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Any other comments or anything? No, fine. Well, thank you very much then. I'd like to now call Mr. Tim Blewett from the Parish Council to come to the table in the front. The microphone has sort of the picture of a face on the front. If you press that, it will go red, which means you're connected to the microphone.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes to speak, Mr. Blewett, and I'll remind you at 10 seconds when you've got 30 seconds to go.
Thank you very much.
You.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak again on this proposed development. This meeting follows the deferral of the decision on this planning application at the meeting in February. Burton and Dalby Parish Council were very appreciative of that decision to defer it, as it enabled us to meet with the developers on site to ensure that a more sympathetic amended proposal be brought back to this meeting. However, it is necessary, though, to say at the outset that from the Parish Council's point of view, and that of many residents that live in properties adjacent, although we are supportive of the amended proposal, we still believe a single 2-story bedroom bungalow would be more, a single-story 2-bedroom bungalow would be more suitable. This is because a bungalow would meet the proven local need that has been established in the 2020 Neighbourhood Plan Survey and has been further reinforced to the Parish Council through dialogue with the local residents who are looking to downsize. The Parish Council, though, would like to thank the developers for tabling the new proposal that is before us this evening, as we do believe that they have tried to move towards our position. We welcome the amended proposal and recognise the changes that have been incorporated. This includes the change in material that is being proposed by the developer so that the new dwelling will resonate more with the surrounding built environment. Although we still do wonder why wood is to be used towards the rear of the building, which seems out of context to its neighbours. However, we recognise that it is a significant improvement on the earlier proposal. Therefore, we wish to support the amended planning application, but with some caveats. It is important to us to see the site developed, and therefore we are willing to support this amended application as one which is a workable compromise. There is, though, a need to, as mentioned, to attach some conditions to the proposed amended planning application for the benefit of all the residents of Burton Lazars and the built environment and street scene in which the proposed new development will sit. So now, if I can turn to those conditions that we would like to see enforced. Firstly, the curtilage. We ask that a condition be placed upon the proposed development to prevent any future planning permission from being allowed within the curtilage of the property. This is for 3 reasons. Firstly, to ensure that no future extensions or alterations threaten the neighbouring local heritage assets of either Lynn Cottage or the old school house. Secondly, to prevent the encroachment of any building work into the current paddock that is to be incorporated into the garden of the new dwelling. This request is supported by the Burton Dalby Neighbourhood Plan, which has identified this area as an open green space. And thirdly, to prevent the disruption of any service piping that runs across the current paddock from neighbouring properties. Moving on to the second point, landscaping. We would like to see a condition placed upon the planning application to ensure that adequate landscaping be provided. This would include keeping the current screening and extending it further. The aim of this would be to prevent the new residents of the proposed property from seeing into neighbouring properties. This is vital if we are going to maintain the privacy of neighbouring properties. In conclusion, we ask that the Planning Committee to approve this amended planning application with the above mentioned conditions placed upon it. We will then work closely with the planning officers and developer to ensure collaboratively.
Thank you, Mr. Blewett. I'm sorry, I've allowed you some leeway, but you went over your time. If you can remain seated, please. Have we got any questions for Councillor Blewett from anybody? Councillor Browne.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Blewett. When you say screening, can you be a little bit more precise about the additional screening you want? Because I believe that the planning officer did say that they were putting that condition in. Yeah, if you could put your microphone on.
So at the moment, you can see quite clearly from the paddock area into the old school house garden and area. So that needs to be, there needs to be proper screening towards the back of the building, just to make sure that it's not dominating the paddock behind. There's need for further screening in that area as well.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Blewett? No, fine. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'd now like to call Mr. Wayne Hickling. If you press the red button, you'll be connected. You have 3 minutes, and I'll warn you at 30 seconds. And I'm pleased to see you feeling better Mr. Hickling to be able
Thank
to
you very
join us
much.
tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. Having previously been one of many residents who submitted strong objections to this development, we've studied the amended plans and recognised that many of our concerns have been addressed. We're now in agreement that we want to see the site developed, especially if it provides a replacement dwelling that is sympathetic in design and style to the neighbouring Lynn Cottage. However, from a perspective of a true replacement for the currently uninhabitable 2-bedroom bungalow and our knowledge of the future needs of local residents, we believe a single-storey 2-bedroom bungalow would be more beneficial to the village. Also, although improved, the height of the amended 2-storey house will have a significant impact on the street scene compared to the existing structure, which is invisible from the street when the hedgerow is at normal height. It is also worth mentioning that there are a number of similar sized 3-bedroom houses frequently for sale in the village, but very few bungalows. To be clear, we are not objecting to these amended plans, but would respectfully request that the committee ask the applicant to consider a bungalow alternative, which would meet an important local need and hold much more support with residents and neighbours. We do have one other residual concern that we would appreciate being addressed. This is around visual amenity. We are immediate neighbours to this development residing in the old schoolhouse. The amended plans show a garden patio with large patio doors that will be looking straight into our land. Some of this view is already screened, but there is a large gap. We note and appreciate the officer's recognition of this need in items 4.6.2 and 5.3 of the latest report. Indeed, in 4.6.2, the officer states, in addition, the applicant has agreed the inclusion of a condition to provide screening along the shared boundary, excuse me, with the neighbouring dwelling known as the Old School to the west. However, when we read the recommended conditions, particularly we see like relevant, which is conditions 4 and 5, we can see no specific mention of the requirement to provide adequate screening. This is of great concern, as I know from experience how a lack of clarity in planning conditions at this stage can lead to future differences in interpretation. We would respectfully request that these conditions be enhanced or a specific condition be added as per the officer's statement to ensure the developer is required to both maintain the existing and provide new appropriate screening that prevents any new residents from seeing into our land. Ideally, we'd also like to be part of the eventual consultation process for approval of the proposals for this screening, if at all possible. Subject to these points, we'd be very happy to support the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickling. If you just remain there for a second. Anybody got any questions for Mr. Hickling? No? Fine. Well, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. I'd now like to call Chris Jesson, who's from the Planning and Design Group. Thank you. You have 3 minutes and I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Committee. I sat here back in February and we considered in depth all of the considerations that were before you at the last iteration. And what we did, we didn't want to act in haste, and we went away and discussed with the project team at length how to devise this, look at this scheme almost as afresh, really. We listened to the matters surrounding materials. We looked at the comments from the parish at the time and considerations of the street scene, and also some of the questions that yourselves raised about how much of the paddock site was covered by the proposal at the time. And the proposal that's now before you has sought to address each and every one of those considerations. We've moved the property across so that the curtilage, the paddock area, the character of that area is protected. We've reduced the scale of the floor area of the site. We have reduced the scale of the garage, albeit allowing plentiful amount of parking adjacent to the property, and that actually then reduces the increases the width, I suppose, of the area between Lynn Cottage and the proposal, because the garage was somewhat close at one stage. And in terms of the bedrooms, yes, there are two first floor bedrooms. The third bedroom on the ground floor is intended to be a flexible space, so it could well be a 2-bedroom dwelling. But we're also mindful of the role of the planning system to provide adaptable homes that are lifetime homes, so that if somebody wants to go into those and stay in the village and stay in that particular property, and if they should have a wish to go into a ground floor bedroom, I'm just quoting, say for a mobility issue or something like that, then that can be possible. So there might well be a situation here where it may well be used as a 2-bedroom dwelling. We're also mindful of the neighbourhood plan survey results, which I explained back in February, did explain there was a preference for 2-bedroom dwellings, but the second preference also appeared to be 3-bedroom dwellings. And it was a balance really between those two considerations there. The precedent housing context in this area is of cottage style 2-storey properties of a mixture of ages as well. So we've taken that all into consideration. We've
30 seconds.
Improved the materials palette and provided further clarity on what materials will be used. We'd be happy to support conditions as drafted in the committee report, but they have to be positively worded. So, you know, if the committee is minded to look at the landscaping condition in further depth with the neighbour, that's fine. But I think in terms of the curtilage condition, the restriction is already there to allow that to come back to planning committee and you know, have further scrutiny without needing to be changed.
Thank you, Mr. Jessen.
Thank you.
If you'd like to remain there, have anybody on the committee got any questions they'd like to ask Mr. Jessen? Councillor Fisher.
Just a quick question. In the application, it references that the hedge at the front of the property, the front of the property that's on the border on New Road, will that be retained at its full height?
Yeah, there's no proposal to take the hedgerow down from yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
yeah, we had to take ecologist advice. So the position of the property was on the basis of what the ecologist told us that at the first iteration before we've moved it back subsequently.
There's no more, so thank you very much, Mr. Jessen. The ward councillor, Councillor Childs, can't be present this evening, so he sent this statement for me to read out. I am unable to attend this evening due to a prior engagement, and as a ward councillor, would wish this letter to be read to all members present. A single-storey 3-bedroom bungalow, as is there at present, would be preferable because it would fit into the built environment and street scene and be more appropriate to the local adjacent heritage asset, that is Lynn Cottage. It would be beneficial if conditions were placed on the application in respect of landscaping, maintaining and extending the current screening with a view to preventing the residents of the proposed development from seeing into the neighbouring property and maintaining their privacy. Currently, no details have been provided by the applicant. To prevent the current neighbouring paddock being incorporated into the garden of the new house, see Burton and Dalby neighbourhood plan, which identifies this as an area of green space. No future or permitted development within the curtilage of the dwelling to ensure that the neighbouring local heritage assets are protected. Providing the above conditions, etc. are met, I would be happy to support this amended application. Thank you. And don't ask me any questions because I don't know what else Councillor Charles was thinking. Right, we've heard all the speakers. I don't know whether Helen's got anything she wants to come back with.
Thank you, Chair. Did you just want me to clarify? So with regards to the landscaping condition would allow for the provision of screen planting along the boundary with the neighbouring property, the old school. However, if members were minded to approve the application and did wish to include an additional condition with regards to screen planting along that boundary, that would be possible to do. But the reason I didn't include it as a separate condition is because I considered as an officer that it could be covered by that existing landscaping condition. And also just to confirm with regards to future development within the site and potential encroachment on what is the existing paddock, it would be condition 11 that would remove permitted development rights. So it would remove permitted development rights, including extensions to the existing dwelling and for any structures or outbuildings within the curtilage of the dwelling. Thank you.
Councillor Browne.
Just one more, Helen. Is it just to be clear, if we were minded to strengthen it, put another condition in around the planting, could we also, is it permissible for us to also add in that the parish council should be consulted as well as part of that? Can we get some advice on that? It's just, I'm just listening to what the parish council have said, and I just think it would be appropriate.
That's advice I'm being given. Councillor Holmes.
Helen, screening, I think probably with the same, the type of screening one would use, or some type of trees. Are you aware, and I've only just aware, but I do know it now because of the property that I've got, that any Leylandii trees built that are planted near another property, say for instance, it was on this property and it was looking at another property, the people who actually plant Leylandii have to take out an insurance of Leylandii now, because there have been so many fires, and I know that's a fact now. So I just thought it might help you. Thank you.
Thank you for that information, but it wasn't actually relevant, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Illingworth.
Moved on significantly, and I do believe that I do believe that the major issues have been addressed. I appreciate that the parish council would prefer a bungalow, but in their 2020 survey, 70% of the respondents identified 2 or 3 bedroom bungalows as a top 3 priority. 59% wanted 2 bedroom houses and 57% 3 bedroom houses. So it's hardly an overwhelming desire. And in any case, they're getting number 2 out of the top 3. It's never a bad result. Furthermore, because the local plan is at an early stage, limited weight can be given to it in any case. And as regards bungalow being more in keeping with adjacent and nearby dwellings, correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn Cottage isn't a bungalow. Old School House isn't a bungalow. And I would venture to suggest that several, if not many, of the existing properties on New Road are not bungalows. So I can't support any deviation other than that it be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Anybody else got any comments to make? Councillor Chandler.
Can we have a, is it on? Yes. Can we have a point of clarification there? Because Councillor Illingworth said local plan. Does he mean the neighbourhood plans under consideration?
Yes, I do, Councillor Chandler, sorry, slip of the tongue.
The comments, anybody? Yeah, if they're still debating it. If not, if you've not got nothing else to ask question, I'd like to ask for somebody to propose it.
Yeah, I was just going to come in there on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Basically, I think it's a very good improvement from the last meeting that we had, and the developer has listened to us and obviously consulted with the parish council and the ward councillor, etc. So that's really good. I take on board what the resident and the parish council said about the bungalow, but you keep basically getting a house and a half, a dormer, which is good. And I like the idea of the fact that there is that future ability to, if somebody does deteriorate in the mobility, etc., as they get older, will be able to use the downstairs. But also as well as we have to recognise that lifestyles are changing as well, and maybe some of that space to be used for an office, etc. You know, we all work at home, and I can't criticise that because I do that myself in that respect. The only thing I'd do is I'd like to propose it, but I would like some help from the officers to add a condition in around the screening towards the old school, I think. And there'll have to be something carefully worded as to what that's taken on board what Councillor Holmes has said in relation to the type of planting that's in there. So it's, i.e. it's not obtrusive, or it's not overbearing, or it's not underbearing, i.e. it does the job that's required. So if I could get some help with that, I would like to propose the recommend approval of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Browne. Are you happy with what Councillor Browne said?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Helen. Do we have a seconder? No. Okay. Okay, Councillor Illingworth. Thank you. That has been proposed and seconded for permit. If I can have a show of hands in support. That is a unanimous decision, so it is permitted. The next application we have withdrawn. There is no urgent business. I would like the members to stay behind when we've closed the meeting, but this meeting is now closed at 6:30. Thank you all very much for your attendance.